It would be a waste to cancel, so I'll just go with my parents. The day before the trip with the in-laws, my husband said this to me, leaving our daughter, who had a high fever, behind. But on the day of the trip, a few hours after my husband left home, my in-laws came to my house to visit our daughter. My in-laws were told by my husband that our daughter couldn't go because of a fever and that he would handle the cancellation process. That's when the lies towards us were exposed. My father-in-law, sensing it all, spoke up and made a suggestion to me. My name is Emma. I'm a housewife. I've been married to my husband Jack for 5 years. We met at the same workplace, in the same department, and grew close while working together, and started dating. My husband has a leadership quality compared to my quiet nature. To put it nicely, he has the power to lead. For me, he's like a beacon. I thought if I followed my husband, he would guide me. Since getting married, I was asked to quit my job and focus on household chores, so I quit and became a housewife. Originally, our company is fine with office romances, but if you marry, you're transferred to a different branch. There's no branch near home, and I'm not attached to the job, so I didn't resist quitting. I thoroughly enjoyed supporting my husband while managing household chores. After 2 years of marriage, I got pregnant, and my husband was looking forward to our child. When our daughter was born, we believed a happy life awaited us. It was supposed to be. But our life has been far from happy. Since our daughter was born, my husband has stopped coming home drastically. When asked why he stopped coming home, he says it's because our daughter's crying is too loud and he can't sleep. Indeed, my daughter is a terrible night crier, and she always starts crying at about 2 a.m. She also cries during the day if she doesn't like something. But isn't her crying cute? Not at all. It's just a nuisance to me. You don't have to say it like that. Well, try not to make her cry too, okay? She's your own child, isn't she? Don't you find her cute? If it's such a hassle, I shouldn't have had her. My husband's words hit me like a rock to the head. I was momentarily stunned by the shock. Indeed, my husband didn't necessarily want a child badly. But a child can't be conceived without my husband's desire, and we both decided to have a child. We were happy when I got pregnant, so I couldn't understand why he'd speak like that. Even then, when our daughter cried while he was home, he'd shout loudly at her. Startled by my husband's loud voice, our daughter begins to cry again. It's truly a negative cycle. Since our daughter was born, my husband's attitude toward me has worsened. He yells at both me and our daughter when something doesn't please him. The days spent tiptoeing around him are exhausting for both me and our daughter. When I was going through a lot, my in-laws showed up at our place. My in-laws and I have a great relationship, so I'm always thrilled when they come over to the house. My daughter was also delighted, laughing out loud. While my father-in-law played with our daughter, my mother-in-law and I had some time alone to talk. "Hey, Emma, you seem tired, don't you?" My mother-in-law noticed my change, so I confided in her about my husband. Then, my mother-in-law said, "It takes some time for men to become fathers. But still, that's a bit harsh. Embarrassing, even for my own son." She was angry with him. There, the husband came back from work. When my husband came home, my mother-in-law suddenly told him, You should take care of your wife and daughter." My husband showed signs of remorse at that time. When my husband is told something bothersome, he generally avoids confrontation by responding casually with some appropriate words on the spot. I often observed this behavior of his, thinking he was just handling the situation casually. But as soon as my in-laws left, he immediately started yelling at me. "You'd have to be insane to snitch on my parents, wouldn't you? I'll be the bad guy, right? I'm sorry. You're just a housewife, and I'm the one who provides for you, so you have the nerve to speak your mind about me. You think you're in a position to speak up and complain about me. You wanted a child, so I let you have it, didn't I? If that's the case, shouldn't you be the one to raise it? I didn't want her to exist." He said and left the house. The words my husband said left me in shock, and I sat down right there. To hear him say such things as a father, the fact that he didn't want our child, it was shocking beyond belief to me. At that moment, our daughter, who was asleep, started crying. I knew I couldn't afford to dwell on my sadness, so I picked up our sleeping daughter in my arms. "Mila, I'll protect you." With this child, I no longer desire anything else. Maybe my husband didn't want a daughter, but having my daughter makes me truly happy. I can't forgive a husband who makes such remarks without hesitation. Still, my husband's attitude toward me and our daughter hasn't changed. If anything, it feels like it's gotten worse. However, I didn't care about my husband's attitude because I was living my life thinking only about my daughter. One day out of the blue, my in-laws invited us to go on a trip. Emma's tired, right? Wants to help you relax. Inviting me on a hot springs trip. She suggested spending time together in a room with my daughter and mother-in-law, all us ladies chatting away. I really appreciate my in-laws taking care of me. I was looking forward to the trip and spent each day excited. And on the day before the trip, our daughter came down with a high fever. She seemed to be in pain, so I wondered what was wrong, but her fever was intense. When we headed to the hospital, I found out it was just a cold, but I didn't want to pass it on to my in-laws, and I didn't want to take my daughter on a trip with a cold, so I decided to refuse the invitation from my in-laws. Then my husband said he would refuse. It was tough to leave my daughter, who was feeling unwell with a fever and in a bad mood, so I decided to ask for a favor. But the next day, my husband made a surprising statement. Actually, I'm going on a trip with my parents. Huh. Didn't you refuse yesterday? When I thought about it, it would cost a lot of money to cancel it, right? It would be a waste of money, so I'm going on a trip with my parents. Besides, you're here, so it would be a waste if I didn't go on the trip because of her. Then he left while laughing. I was dumbfounded by my husband's words, unable to close my gaping mouth. Is his mindset really that rotten? Why did I ever follow him? I've decided to divorce him. As I was thinking about the future, the doorbell rang. Peeking at the intercom monitor, I saw my in-laws standing there. I was surprised to see my in-laws standing there, who were supposed to be on a trip with my husband just a few hours ago, but I hurriedly headed to the front door and unlocked it. What happened? I heard that Mila had a cold, so I got her some fruits and other things that are good for her digestion. Is Mila okay? Huh. Where did Jack go? Father-in-law realized my husband was missing. Upon hearing the recent events, the in-laws were furious. After some thought, father-in-law started making a call, suspecting something. After the call, he seemed to confirm his suspicions. He then explained whom he called and what he confirmed. My husband was at the hot spring trip the in-laws had booked. It seems like my father-in-law was told by my husband, our daughter got a fever, so we can't go on the trip. I'll handle the cancellation. When he called the inn and checked the reservation status, he found that the room for two that my husband and father-in-law were supposed to stay in had not been cancelled, and the room for me, my mother-in-law, and my daughter had been cancelled. The double room was already checked in, with a man and woman there. When they told him that the name on the reservation was different, he explained at check-in that his father had made the reservation for them on their honeymoon, and that he had been sick and couldn't come with them, and they had entered the inn. My father-in-law was trembling with anger as he spoke. My husband is cheating despite our daughter having a fever. But I'm not sure about my husband yet. Still, there are aspects that make sense about him cheating. When my husband gets angry, he often storms out of the house, but sometimes he'll come back after just one night without any luggage. The next day, when I did the laundry, 2 pairs of underwear came out. There was another pair of underwear that shouldn't have been there. Surely, it must mean my husband's belongings are at his affairs place. I resent myself for not noticing anything strange before. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were furious, but of course, I'm the angriest one. As I held onto his hand tightly, looking down, my father-in-law seemed to have an idea. Let's demolish this house, he suddenly muttered. When I looked at my father-in-law in surprise, he looked at me with a smile and started talking. He said, I own this house. I inherited it from my dad and gave it to Jack. Though I recently installed new things like toilets, baths, and intercoms, the building itself is old. Shouldn't we just tear it down? Certainly, I was told by my husband that we were supposed to inherit the house with the intention of remodeling, but we didn't have the money, so it never happened. If it's okay with you, Emma, I'm planning on demolishing it. What do you think? Of course, please go ahead. When I conveyed that, the conversation quickly progressed. My father-in-law told me to pack up, and he contacted an acquaintance in the demolition business. I packed my and my daughter's belongings and arranged for a moving company to take us to my parents' house. Now it's the off-season, so I could book for the next day. When my father-in-law explained the situation, the demolition crew came the next day and quickly tore it down. The day after the house was safely demolished, my husband returned from his week-long trip. As I had just finished moving into my parents' house and was starting a new life, I received a mass call from my husband. I knew I had to talk to him, so I picked up the phone and he said, "Hey, the house is gone. What's going on?" When I come back, the place where the house was supposed to be is a vacant lot. I demolished the house. Can't you see? Don't mess around. Where are you now? Come here immediately. I left my daughter with my parents and headed to my in-laws' house to join my husband and my in-laws. He seemed to understand everything just by seeing me with my in-laws. Because I'm with my in-laws, who were supposed to be on a trip with him. Why? It's not why, you know. You get it, right? You were cheating, weren't you? Having fun. I wasn't cheating. My father-in-law informs him that he called the inn to check on. And that night, my father-in-law went alone to a hot spring inn that he had booked and captured a picture of my husband and his affair partner together. Seeing that photo, my husband fell silent, unable to utter a word. Witnessing his reaction, my father-in-law grabbed him by the collar, furious. "What the hell are you doing?" Eek. With a small shriek, my husband cowered in fear. But then, out of the blue, my husband turned to me and said, "Your house is gone too. What are you gonna do?" "I'm going back to my parents' house, so I don't have a problem. I've already moved all my stuff." "Is that so? Thank you." My belongings were quite a lot. Did they fit in at your parents' place? "What are you talking about? All of your belongings were gone along with the house rubble." "Huh. Well, you have some belongings at your affair's place, right? You can manage with that for a living." When I said that, my husband glared at me, stomped over, and stood in front of me. As my husband attempted to raise his hand at me, my father-in-law intervened, pushing him away. "Please, let's get a divorce," I said, confronting my husband in a pitiful state, pushed aside by my father-in-law. "Divorce? Don't be silly. You've been depending on me since you were a housewife, right? Even at work, you've always depended on me. Do you really think you can live on your own? Are you planning to take advantage of your parents after me? You can't do anything on your own, can't you?" He mocked me like that. My anger reached its peak, and everything I had been holding back exploded. "You told me to become a housewife, so I did. Plus, for the past 2 years, you've only contributed about $500 to our living expenses, right? I've been using not just your money but also dipping into my savings." In fact, my husband started putting in only $500 for living expenses shortly before our daughter was born. With no income after quitting my job, managing with just $500 was tough. Even without rent, it's impossible to cover food, utilities, and necessities with $500. So, I relied on my savings to make ends meet. I'll say it again. Please, let's get a divorce, I conveyed, handing the filled-out divorce papers to my husband. The husband, muttering "I don't want to," reluctantly wrote the divorce papers as his parents-in-law forced him. I bid farewell to him, then immediately went to the city office to submit the divorce papers. Later on, I discussed with a lawyer about alimony and child support and requested them from my husband. The divorce papers were officially accepted, and we were legally divorced. Seems like my in-laws cut ties with my husband, leaving him nowhere to go, so he moved in with his affair partner. However, it turned out that the husband's affair partner actually had a main boyfriend, and they were caught together at her place. It became chaotic, and my husband thought that his affair partner would choose him, but of course, the affair partner chose her main boyfriend, and my husband was dumped without a second thought. I am sure the pants my husband was wearing also belonged to the main boyfriend. It seems my husband was just a source of money, as he was used and then got dumped. The discarded husband came to rely on me and sought shelter at my parents' house, but of course, I drove him away. I don't know what he's doing now, but he's probably living a lonely life. Sometimes, you only realize things after losing everything. I live with my daughter at my parents' house. My daughter's developing her own personality, crying when upset, laughing a lot when happy, and showing various expressions. Watching such an adorable daughter by my side makes me truly happy. I keep in touch with my in-laws from time to time and keep them updated with pictures of my daughter's progress. I really admire my in-laws for always offering their support and telling me I can rely on them whenever I need. With such a strong ally, even though I've become divorced, I feel like I can manage smoothly. Somehow, my daughter seems to cry less and smile more often. Seeing her smile, I reaffirm that my decision wasn't wrong. With the support of my in-laws, I'll continue to live strongly with my daughter.